Hello, my name is Andres Chavez, and I worked on the EFDT team along with Gustavo Gonzalez. We were guided by Professor Sajadi during the fall 2019 semester, and we worked to create an expert advisor for the MetaTrader 5 platform. So, if you are not familiar with foreign exchange currencies or the Forex market or MetaTrader yet, I would recommend pausing this video before you watch it and going on to take a look at some of the tutorial docs that we have. In this wiki, you can see one. It's called E4T Training, and it'll basically get you caught up very quickly. And we also have some videos that will sort of be like a crash course on the foreign exchange market. So hopefully that would be useful to you before you take a look at this. Because I'm going to be assuming basic knowledge of foreign exchange, and it'll help you understand what I'm saying about the Gordon algorithm. So our project was done in MQL5, which is the proprietary language for MetaTrader. And as long as you're familiar with C or C++, it shouldn't be a big deal. To be completely honest, the difficulties in this project are usually not technical. They're a lot of times just related to trying to understand how the foreign exchange market works. So for us, it felt like a lot of the hardest parts were the overhead involved in learning about foreign exchange. So if you put a lot of effort into doing that, you should be all right. So like I said, this was done in the MQL5 language, and we hosted it on GitHub, but linked it to an Azure DevOps repository, which we use to do our documentation. We used it for all our agile methodology sort of stuff. If you guys have access to this wiki, you can actually see all the sprints that we did and all the documents that we had. So if you go to over here, boards, and you click on sprints, this is the last sprint that we did. But you can see, I think, all the way up to sprint 1, sprint 2, what we completed, what we worked on, all that sort of stuff. So we also used Azure DevOps for automatic deployment and automatic building. But that'll probably come for you guys later on down the road. So the Gordon Expert Advisor is essentially an automated trader for the foreign exchange market, and it's an algorithm provided to us by Gordon Barnett and Professor Sajadi. The details of how it works are all documented in the Gordon Google Drive, which you'll definitely be provided with because it'll give you like a good crash course on how it works, and he even has demo videos on it. But I'm going to go through a high level overview of it now, so hopefully you understand the basics, the very basics of foreign exchange at this point. So this is just a screen grab from the poster that we made for our senior project, but it is exactly what the Gordon Expert Advisor looks like when it's working on the strategy tester from MetaTrader. And essentially the way that the Expert Advisor works is that there's these things called technical indicators. And those indicators, basically, it sounds silly, but they indicate what is going on in the foreign exchange market at that time. So there's 3 different indicators, and each of them indicate sort of a different thing. And we have this bottom one down here is called the RSI, and that stands for Relative Strength Index. And what that means is it tells us if a lot of people are buying or a lot of people are selling a specific currency pair. So if a lot of people are buying a currency pair, as a day trader, that's pretty helpful because it allows us to say, hey, if a lot of people are buying right now, it's likely that they're going to continue buying. So maybe we should open a position and then close it before all the hype dies, so to speak. So that's what the RSI does. It's the Relative Strength Index. It tells us volume, essentially. Above it, we have this thing called a MACD. So MACD stands for Moving Average Convergence Divergence. I'm not going to go into the technical weeds of it, but it essentially tells us the likelihood that a trend is going to continue. So if the RSI, this blue one down here, is telling us that a lot of people are buying, the MACD is telling us that those people are going to continue to buy, or those people are going to start buying less, or oh, now it's going to actually change and people are going to start selling more. So it gives us an idea of what's going to happen. So the RSI and the MACD indicators work really well together, and they sort of fill in the gaps that the other one leaves. So we have volume and we have strength right here. Finally, we have the Bollinger Bands technical indicator. And essentially, the Bollinger Bands measure volatility of the market. So we have these three bands, right? Upper band and the lower band are the ones that we're worried about. And when the bands are compressed, like you can see right here, they're like really close together. That basically means that there's not going to be a lot of volatility in the market, and we don't really care about doing anything at that point, because as a day trader, we want volatility. Now, when they open up, that's called an expansion, and that's really when we want to go in. And the way that this algorithm works is that all three of these indicators essentially provide us with what's called a threshold. But really, all that means is they provide us with a value from 1 to 100, that 100 being the best, 1 being the worst, that is basically an approximation of whether or not it's a good time to open a position in the foreign exchange market. So think of the Bollinger Bands as the leader of these indicators. And if the Bollinger Bands gives a thumbs up and says, hey, I think that maybe you should open a position right now, essentially what happens in the code is that we'll then look at the response from the other two indicators. And if all three indicators are saying, hey, it looks like it's a good time to open a position, then we'll actually go ahead and do that. And then that position will later on be closed through a bunch of different ways that can happen. But that's the gist of the algorithm, and that's really the important part about it, opening a position at the right time. And you'll definitely hear about it as you learn more and more about this project and some of the issues that we had. But currently it actually opens positions at really good times. But one of the issues that we face is actually when it closes positions. And we're going to have a whole video on that, and we have documentation about issues with it as well. So as you guys go further, I'm sure that you'll run into that. And that's one of the places actually that we think that there's room for improvement, but that'll get covered later. Finally, I just want to go over some of the designs and stuff that we have here. This is our final documentation. I recommend reading through this just so you guys can understand the different indicators. So actually in this document we have the technical analysis tools. You could read about each of the indicators on Investopedia. But I wanted to cover the actual design that we did to get a better look at how it actually works, like the algorithm that I just explained to you, what it does. So we have these three signals. These three indicators, which I just told you about, RSI, MACD, and Bollinger Bands, and they all come together to produce the Gordon algorithm that I just showed you. And it's a lot to take in, I think, but essentially the way that this just works is that, like I said, they each do their job to predict if it's a good time to open a position in the market. The last thing I wanted to show you was this use case diagram that essentially you also have all these inputs on your expert advisor that allow you to control what it might do or how you really want it to act, which you guys will get into as you learn more and more about MetaTrader. But essentially, the inputs on your expert advisor allow you to allow you to make it more nuanced. So, for example, I just told you that the three signals have a job of approximating if it's a good time to go into the foreign exchange market, and you can decide how much in agreement they all need to be. You can decide, do they all need to be like at 100? Should they all think it's a perfect time to go in? Or should they all be like somewhat in agreement? And you have that power, and you can control a lot of other inputs too. In addition to that, you can select a currency pair to actually work on. Like I said before, in day trading, you want to be in a volatile market. So the currency pair that we've been using, and I think that it's recommended, is the British pound versus USD. And since we're day traders, we've been using a 15-minute time frame. You could probably use a little bit less than that if you want, or a little bit more than that, but you generally want to stay around 10 minutes for sure, I think. And I didn't cover it much in this introduction video, but we have analysis objects on the charts as well, and you can actually sort of see them. You see these two red lines in this picture, and all that those chart objects are in the Gordon Advisor, which you can also see in Gordon's demos, are tools to help you analyze what's going on in the market. But as of right now, those chart objects are pretty much just there for your own purposes. But I think another next step would be to actually use that in the process of helping the expert advisor decide what it's going to do. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, I definitely recommend looking at Gordon's demos and videos. His Forex trading strategy will basically be a more detailed version of how I explained the Gordon Expert Advisor. We have a bunch of documentation, and on top of that, you also have documentation from previous teams. You have summer 2019 and you have fall or spring 2019 as well, to help you learn about how this actually works. And yeah, thank you.